External stakeholders seeing this and getting variable answers to questions become dissatisfied and become motivated to help more, which drives the internal cultural reaction even deeper down a path, which creates even more concern from stakeholders. So that cycle creates an unsatisfying result. So let's create a better cycle. The roller coaster ride that we've been on for the last 33 years from Moon to Mars started back formally with the announcement of the Space Exploration Initiative by President Bush 41. Well, it's been 33 years since then, and we're still on that roller coaster ride. And in the wake of multiple shifts in approach, there is widespread stress and anxiety, both inside and outside the agency. So for one of those large shifts in approach a decade or so ago, there was a necessary shift at the time to make the best with what they could, and that was to shift into a capability-based framework. And that's another way of saying level of effort, as I mentioned before. This is where we're saying, well, what can we do with the budget that we have? And that can be an okay approach, except for you're not going to be moving out with purpose, and it doesn't fully support a long-term strategy, at least if you're trying to accomplish something in the wake of, in the face of competitors. So what we want to do is have an objectives-based approach or a goal-based approach. So we have to think strategically, we want to be resilient and flexible at the same time, and we want to do this in a unified way. And so when we talk about those three principles now, first, architecting from the right. We want to be goal-based or an objective-based. You have to start with the thing on the goal on the right-hand side that you're trying to achieve, and from there figure out what elements are needed to flesh out that architecture. And then only from there do you then execute from the left. Granted, this is a clean sheet of paper approach to this, so we're not dealing with a clean sheet of paper here at NASA, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But that first principle is architect from the right, or be goal-based. So once we've established that rigor in architecting from the right, the next principle is we want to stick with the plan. We want the constancy of purpose. What do we mean by that? Well, if we have that wireframe that says, here's the plan, but then surely we're going to end up in a situation where we say, okay, we have limited funding. There are two schools of thought. One school of thought is to alter the plan, where you abandon the plan on the left and alter the plan to match so you can fully fund some other goal. And it's a totally different goal. It probably doesn't have the same rigor that went into the wireframe on the left. And you've got a new baseline from which future cuts will occur. But most importantly, you lose pace on the original goal that you had because you've abandoned it. Another way to deal with the limited funding is to stick with the plan and adjust to the funding that you'd received by prioritizing and preparing for more fruitful days. You've got constancy of purpose now. The progress is slow, but you maintain your technical credibility. That's important for technical resilience. I'd received feedback that this is very similar to the approach that we have been taking in the past, that we did architect from the right and we were sticking with the plan some 10, 15 years ago. But unfortunately, what happened is that was the initial attempt to prioritize and prepare for more fruitful days. But then over time, there was a perceived or real disincentive to communicate about the rest of the wireframe. So what happened over time is the communication or the engagement about that external wireframe started to fade, and we lost clarity on the overall plan, even though we were still doing these decentralized efforts. Now, if you were closer to those efforts, you could definitely see how it all connects together. But if you had some activity that was further away from that, and there was no unified architecture that we were all talking about, it was hard to see how you connected. So people had their own ideas of how they connected into this. So what we want to do is get back into a unified approach with a constancy of purpose where everybody is communicating from the same sheet of music and we all have the same plan. It not only helps NASA and our funding in trying to prepare for more fruitful days, but it also helps our industry and international partners to have a consistent visualization of what their opportunity paths are in this plan. And then over time, as we maintain this constant drumbeat, the external stakeholders hopefully start tapping their foot to the drumbeat. We, both inside and outside the agency, start tapping our foot to that same drumbeat. And then over time, those funding shortfalls hopefully start filling in. So we want to stick with the plan that we have architected from the right in a unified way. These principles help us maintain our technical credibility, as well as help us brave the storms of funding woes. And that technical resilience and financial resilience also feeds into political resilience with our external stakeholders, as well as administrations. And all of this resilience feeds back on our principles and galvanizes them, which in turn reinforces the resilience. And this is where the third principle of communication comes in. Communication is the lifeblood that drives this reinforcing cycle. Communication and engagement are the catalysts that ensures understanding, unity, constancy, technical credibility, and ultimately the best chance at a satisfying result. We have a federated board at NASA whose membership is made up of senior leaders from the mission directorates and charged with promoting consensus, resolving conflicts, and providing advice to leadership. Having the federated board helps not only with unity of purpose, but it is also a solid source of communication within the agency.